Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Cleantech Lithium PLC Investor Update. Throughout today's recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted at any time just using the Q&A tab on the right-hand corner of your screen. Questions are encouraged. They can be submitted any time, as I've said. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives. However, the company can review all questions. We'll publish those where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll, and I'm sure the company will be most grateful for your participation. I'll now hand over to Daniel Fox-Davis. Daniel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good evening from Dubai, and Happy New Year to you, Mark, and to everybody, and to Ignacio.
Hi, Daniel, how are you?
I am well. I am all the better for the last couple of days of following Cleantech's announcements, and more importantly, Cleantech's share price. I'm just looking at today and see that we've just closed up a mid price of 8.25 on another good day of volume. So fantastic, but yeah, I'm really great. But you have been busy, sir. It looks like you were, no doubt, working all through Christmas.
Yeah, we've been busy lately. As we mentioned, the last Investor Meet Company webinar that we had, we were preparing for the closing of the indigenous consultation process in the CEOL, and then to be ready to apply to the CEOL as soon as the new streamline process opened, and that's what we did. So we announced yesterday that we had applied to the CEOL well ahead of the deadline, which is the end of January, and now we're going to be working with the government to make sure that if there are any doubts, they are resolved before the deadline, so we can move on with this streamline process.
Fantastic. So let's just be clear then. So the closing date for the streamline process officially is
It's January 30.
January 30. But also taking back from my enthusiasm from your share price. So just to clarify then, for those who haven't caught up with parties for a long time, so we went through the indigenous consultation. That was formalized, I think, at the middle towards the back end of November. So then they formally announced in early December. And for anybody who's not maybe been able to participate in all of the recent webinars, although Investor Meet does a fantastic job and they are all available. If we go all the way back, we had put in for the original sale, and then we were declined because at that point of time, we had our reference polygon, of which we had well over 90%, but the government came back with a larger reference polygon, which we had under 80%. And just for clarity, in order to undertake the fast track for the sale license, and Ignacio, just indulge me here, what does sale stand for again in Spanish?
It's a special operation contract for lithium.
No, but in Spanish, what does it actually translate at?
It's a contrato especial de operación de litio.
Exactly. So this is the license then to extract the lithium. So we have the mineral license to give you rights to everything except the lithium. You need the sale license from the government. In order to fast track, we need to have more than 80% in order to show that you have the balance sheet capable to go forward to develop the project. We were rejected back last year. We then appealed. The government insisted on the increased polygon. So we did the fundraising at the back end of last August, where we acquired additional licenses. We'll bring up on the map, which now gives us 97% approximately of the increased polygon area. There's a few blocks that we don't have, but just for the avoidance of doubt, Ignacio, nobody else can apply or would qualify for the application.
Yes, Dan. So applications are open and any company can apply. However, to meet the requirements is a whole different story. Last time around, as you mentioned, we didn't meet the 80% ownership criteria. Now we have, as you said, well over 95% of the mining properties within the polygon. And that means, as you were asking, that we are the only company that can successfully apply to the CEOL this time around.
Well, so I'm going to come into those in a bit more detail, but that's the headline one that's come back. But let's go into that a little bit more. But the MERS thing as well, that has really been really helping a lot of the lithium stocks, particularly in Australia. And yet I feel we've yet to really benefit on the impact, probably because I think most investors wanted to see the sale application in. And then we'll talk in a second about the timeline for when we expect to be awarded. But the lithium price is back doing a fantastic job through the month of November and December. Do you want to sort of comment about what's driving that, where the price is today? I had hoped to, so this is in yuan. I had hoped to find a one in the US dollars, but I'm afraid I can't find the data feed from Bloomberg immediately. But one can see the trend here. But so what's been happening here, Ignacio? What's been driving this through?
Well, I remember we've discussed this in the past. We are not really forecasting prices, but we can see the demand is very strong. Not only in energy storage for EVs, but also in batteries. BESS demand has been much larger than what was expected or forecasted before, and that has driven not only sentiment, but also it is more on reality. There's a tight supply at the moment in the market, and that it's proven by all the continuous increases in the lithium price. Even today, this morning in China, the price increased, I think the spot price 6-point-something%, and the futures are around 9%. And even though we don't know what price is going to continue doing, we believe that demand will continue to sustain pricing. And even though some mines might come back in China, the price should continue to be very strong throughout 2026.
I mean, on our provisional, I agree. We're not commodity forecast experts. I know that everybody in the company is fairly bullish on the long-term price of lithium. I'm fairly bullish on the long-term price of lithium, but we don't have the resources or the expertise to pull all of that data together. So we tend to take a consensus view. But I did see an interesting one actually that's saying that the last 2 cycles, the lithium price moved by between 10 to 15x from its base price. That was certainly true in the last cycle when Cleantech did its pre-IPO. I think we're at $7,000 or $8,000 a ton, and it went all the way up. But it's certainly looking positive. I think Ignacio, help me. Who is the guys who do excellent research out of New York that you've done some interviews with? Howard Klein.
Howard Klein, yes.
Yeah. RK Equities, for anybody that hasn't seen them, their research is available. They have a YouTube site. They've interviewed the company in the past, but they do a number of interviews with different experts and commentators about the lithium price, and they do quite a good job in explaining what is driving the lithium price. And they do get into giving some forecasts. So anyone who's interested is welcome to look from there. But anyway, this is very positive for the overall lithium market. I don't think any of the increase on the lithium price has been really sort of reflected into the company through November and December because we were waiting for the sale. And I think part of the job now is to get out and start marketing the story again. Now we have something that we can actually definitively point to. Right. So do you want to talk a little about the government changes here?
Yes. So in November and December, we had the first round on the ballotage on the presidential elections. The 2 people that went to the ballotage were continuity on one hand with a communist candidate, and then José Antonio Cast, which was a change with a far right proposal, and he won by a landslide. Almost 60% of the votes went to Cast, and so his whole campaign was based on 3 main ideas. One is economic growth, and for that he has been very insistent and bullish on all industries, but mainly on mining. He has said that he will continue and respect this government's policy, but also expand, and will be looking to award more sales in the future. And the other 2 main topics that he's been pointing out to is immigration and safety. Like many other far-right candidates, he will make sure, or he'll try to make sure the immigration is more controlled in Chile, and that we have a safety crisis, or what they like to call a lot of insecurity in the country. So he will be focusing on that. He's calling it an emergency government. So we can see, from what we can see, especially mining will be very a particular focus for growth, and he will be trying to promote investment and the development of new projects in copper with the new cycle, and in lithium with also this new cycle that is starting, and with this lithium strategy that is enabling new companies to enter the environment.
I think the main thing that everybody would want to know and get your opinion on is do you think anything in the change could have any impact on any of the decisions taken in the last 4 years with respect to the government's lithium strategy? And is there any risk that any change in the government could lead to a change? So let's assume that we get the sale in the next 4 or 5 weeks with the end of the closing into February. We'll come on to that in more detail. But what is the risk that come March, the government, throws up a hand and says, right, we're going to do another strategic review, we're going to change it? Is there any danger to the prospects of the company from the change in the government?
Look, I'm very positive with what's coming with Chilean government. What we've talked with this new administration, incoming administration, is they want to make sure they bring more investment. Part of that is to respect the rule of law and certainty for investors, and therefore they want to continue and enhance or push this lithium strategy. And what I believe can happen in the future for us is the possibility to look for other projects beyond only Laguna Verde. We have Viento Andino as well, which was not prioritized by this government, but there are definitely opportunities that can open up in the future for that or other projects. And also, I think, notwithstanding when we receive the CEOL, if we are into the streamline process, the new government will certainly respect what the previous government has been doing.
Yeah, I mean, everything that it is to we read is the government is more pro-mining and on the right side, but I think it's important that you can specify that to reassure people.
Sure.
So let's take across. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the application, okay? So CEOL, which in Spanish was what you said. So we've submitted well ahead of schedule. So we had a couple of questions here about the. I'm gonna, gentlemen and those participating, I'm going to try and group some of the questions together rather than going through every one there one. But this is a public process to which anybody could apply, and you need to prove in that application that you meet the criteria. And the criteria was to show that you have more than 80% of the mineral licenses over the polygon. We'll come on to that, of which we have 97. So another party could apply. I could apply personally, but I don't meet any of the criteria. So the government is holding it in accordance with its rules until the 30th of January. So even though we've submitted, and even though we're the only party, officially it has to stay open until the 30th of January. The other thing a couple of people asked Ignacio is, how confident are we of now meeting the financial requirement on the balance sheet? Maybe you could give a little bit more explain about that one, about the consortium and how that's going to work.
Yeah. So let me start from the beginning. When I joined back in April last year, we had already applied to the CEOL under the streamline process. And what happened is that the government ruled that we did not meet two of the criteria. There were more requirements, but only two were not met by the company, which were, as you mentioned, Daniel, the ownership of the licenses within the polygon, and then the financial capacity. So what we've been doing since then and until before applying is making sure that we fix those problems. And once we applied again, we wanted to make sure that we were far from meeting the requirements. So you may remember, you mentioned the fundraise back in July, I think, or August it was. We acquired the Minergy licenses, and that meant we had now 97% of the polygons. So let's say that's a check. We already have more than 80% of the licenses within the polygon. There you can see the polygon in dark, and then our licenses are in dark and the polygon is in blue. So we only have two small areas we don't own, but well above 80%, which is the requirement by the government. And then on the financial capacity, what we did is a commercial arrangement with a serious mineral exploration and production company with a very strong financial balance sheet. They much more than comply with the requirement, and as part of this arrangement, they have now less than 0.01% of the applying company, and they have the obligation to sell that share to whichever company we end up choosing as the strategic partner that will accompany us through the development of this process. And that's why we also announced today that Cutfield Freeman will be the company that's supporting us with the search for the strategic partner, and then in the future with the funding for the project.
Yeah. Let's come on to them in just 1 second, if we may, Ignacio. So, obviously, I'm a permanent insider at the moment, so I'm aware. So it is a very large, well-known mining group, of which a number of the executives of the company have a close working relationship, and so they've come in and helped put in the consortium. So the consortium, what was the requirement that we needed? The consortium needs to have a financial requirement of a balance sheet of more than 30 million.
One of the companies of the consortium, or their parent companies or affiliated companies, one of them has to meet the financial capacity requirement, which is, as you mentioned, $30 million of net assets. And the company that we're talking about more than easily meets that requirement.
Hundreds of millions of net assets. So that's grand. And I obviously Gordon, who's not on the call, who is a stickler for detail and going through. You wouldn't have gone through this without being happy and satisfied and taking advice that this would now meet the requirements.
Absolutely. In fact, if you look at the CEOLs that are already in process of being already signed, most of them are consortiums, and they have passed the government's scrutiny. We also had several meetings with government, and we explained this strategy, and they said it was perfectly fine. So we are very comfortable with it.
That's what I was trying to get to, is so that you have the question was, how confident are we that we've met the criteria? So on the application, we know we do, and we've spoken with the ministry, and with regard to the financial capacity requirement criteria, we've also we pre-flagged this with the ministry ahead of time. So in terms of confidence that we now meet the two ones that we were deficient for, I suppose your position is we are 100% confident that we meet the technicalities of the requirement.
Yeah, we're in a very strong position. And we're just waiting. Of course, we'll be talking to the government throughout this month to make sure that everything is in line for their decision, and we expect them to be making some comments by early February. The first or second week of February should be when they announce that we are admitted into a streamlined process.
Okay, so let's go through the timeline. So officially, the process has to remain open until the 30th of January, despite the fact that nobody else would qualify, and it would be somewhat absurd if anyone else came forward. Then, obviously, you spent quite a bit of time with the ministry and working with them to make sure that the application meets all the requirements. So, and they've had the previous application, so it's largely a duplication, just with the increased license area and the variation on the financial capacity. So your expectation is that sometimes around mid-February, we should hear back that we're being admitted into the streamline process.
Yes. Yeah, mid-February, we should be contacted to begin. And that what does it mean? That we need to sit down with government to negotiate the specific terms of the CEOL, of the contract that would rule the relationship and the project for well over, I think, over 30 years.
Okay, so from our side, we would expect to announce then in February, in about sort of 5 to 6 weeks, that we have been admitted into the process, at which point then it's an exclusive relationship that we are then going to be awarded the contract, subject to negotiation of the fine print and ending into the detailed contract.
Yes, and quite frankly, the negotiation is very small, or it's a short process, because they have already awarded CEOLs and they want to keep it very tight in terms of the regulations. So the rules are already known to us. And
so yes, well, I mean, effectively, it's not really a negotiation. The government has set the terms of the sales with respect to the other sales that have been granted. Is there much variation between the ones that have already been granted? And if so, where have those variations occurred?
No, it's pretty standard at this point in time. So we know what to expect from the negotiation. And everything looks good, and it looks commercially viable. If someone has that doubt, it looks really, really good.
Okay, Steve M, I hope that addresses your question. I'll go through. So mid-February, and then given that they've already now gone into and awarded several other sales and there's very little variation between them, what do you expect is the timeline, Ignacio, for us to actually receive? There's the official timeline, but how quickly, in the other sales that have been awarded, what was the timeline between the government announcing that somebody is going into the fast track and actually finalizing and being awarded the sale?
So there are two things. One is signing the contract, and then there is the approval by the National Controller's Office, and that takes some time. But we should be expecting to be ready by the beginning of Q2. That's what we said before, and we continue to believe that timeline is reasonable.
Okay, so we're hoping there's a lot of things in there to sort of keep it very simple for our shareholders and potential shareholders, is that we now expect sometime around mid-Feb, giving up things, second, third week of February, to be announced that we're into the sale application, and that we would hope that some point in the beginning or the middle of Q2, we get awarded the sale.
Yes, so the sale starts by the beginning of Q2. We expect to be closing the negotiation in February. Then the contract should be signed and go to the controller office, and that takes some time, but by April everything should be ready.
Okay, I'm going to come on to that. That's excellent news all round. Sorry, Ignacio, I cut you off.
Yes, we haven't mentioned the pre-feasibility study. I don't know if you want to talk about it later.
No, that's what I wanted to jump into before we talk about this. I want to talk about, let's go just to recap for everybody. It's a new year. Obviously, we put a lot of time and money into the pre-feasibility study. We had decided that there is certain information that could be commercially sensitive, and that it was not in the company's interest to publish it until we had the award of the sale, or until we've been announced that we're in the fast track, because as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, Ignacio, your view is that once we announced, it's then just a formality to getting it. So we put that, much to the disappointment of our investors, and it did put a drag on the share price. Obviously, with the acquiring of the further surrounding acreage and licenses last August, that PFS needed to be updated and expanded to encompass the new licenses. So I think what the shareholders would like to know is, one is, has it been updated and been finalized? Secondly, at what point in this process would you now expect to publish the PFS publicly? Sorry.
Yeah, so we already announced an increase in the resources to 1.9 million metric tons LCE. As part of that process of the acquisition of the minergy licenses, the PFS is in the final drafting, so it's already done, and we will publish it, or we will announce it and share details once we are admitted into the streamlined process. So as you mentioned, maybe second or third week of February, but it is ready to go. Finally.
Okay, so second, third week of February, as soon as we get the announcement back that we are into the streamlined process, we will then be publishing the PFS.
Exactly.
Okay, and we got some robust
That's
numbers.
The whole idea.
Yeah, that's another one. I think actually, let's just to remind investors, one of the things that I've always liked about cleantech is that we are sort of at the very sort of bottom of the third quartile in terms of the cost curve. So refresh me, our marginal break-even cost in terms of the lithium price, Ignacio, was roughly.
Yeah, I don't think we can share those numbers publicly.
No, we'd spoken before. Steve had spoken before on the previous ones. On the one, it was around about 6 or 7, I think it was the one on the previous numbers. Now, obviously, that will be updated on the scoping study. Yeah. So while those numbers will have no doubt changed, and there's this inflation that comes in from there, but within the previous curve, our previous numbers was there, but one would expect it to still be sort of well under 10 in terms of a long-term one, something between whatever it is, 6 or 10. But I wanted to reiterate to shareholders is that although we're getting a recovery, there are other projects in there that need to be well into the 20s. I've looked at some other projects in Europe that have a break even of sort of 18, 19, 20, 22. And the point is that while the overall market gets moved by the lithium sentiment, which has been negative on pricing, we got, even at the lowest price, we were still at a point where our project would still be profitable. And I think that was missed by many people. And I just wanted to reiterate that. But that will all come out in the PFS.
Yeah, but Dan, yeah, let me talk a little bit about that. As you just generic comments or a general comment is, brines from South America will always be in the lowest part of the cost curve regarding OPEX. That's for sure. And what I've read, what we've seen from analysts is especially from RK Equity that you mentioned, is they mentioned they believe brines are undervalued vis-a-vis hard rock mining in Australia. The companies that do lithium extraction from brines in South America, given our lowest cash cost, or as you mentioned, for operations, are undervalued regarding hard rock operations in Australia. So I'm very comfortable that our operation will always be amongst the cheapest or lowest cost in the OPEX in the world because of where we are and what we do and how we'll do it. And that makes it very attractive for us and our investors. And looking forward, what I wanted to mention also is this admission into a streamlined process, the publishing of our PFS meant it was the right time to start looking for a strategic partner. And that's why we announced Cutfield Freeman this morning. And I think that's what we want to talk about now.
Let's step on to, so do you want a little bit of background to explain who Cutfield Freeman are, where they're based, etc., and how you came across them?
Yes, well, so we did a process, an open process with several companies looking for the best partner for us to look for the strategic partner and to look for the funding of the project going forward. And having talked to very strong companies from all around the world, we decided Cutfield Freeman was the best suited to help us. They have offices in London and in several other places, but their headquarters are in London. I met Nick and Andrew there in my last visit. They have very thorough, a lot of experience doing deals. These are some examples that you can see in the slide all across the world, different industries, different jurisdictions. They also have experience in Chile, having supported the sale of ExxonMobil. They sold a mine called La Disputada de las Condes to Anglo American a few years ago. So they have global experience. They have worked in the lithium industry. They have helped our peers. They are working with Savannah Resources, for example. And we believe they are the right company to support us in the look for a strategic partner that we are starting as of this call, as of this IMC. And the partner would come at a project level to support the development of the Laguna Verde project.
I'm just looking at their website now. They've got so they are a sort of more of a specialist M&A corporate finance advisory firm specializing in the mining sector since 2000. They've done over 200 projects over the last 25 years. 200 mandates in more than 50 different countries. But they specifically have done a number of deals also in the lithium space that we haven't listed here, but they have a deep knowledge within Latin America. So I think they'd be an excellent fit. And what is their actual mandate though? Their mandate is to seek out a joint venture partner for the project development.
Exactly. First, there are two stages. The first stage is to look for the right partner and the right partnership structure for the development of the project. And then once we are into project finance, is support also the funding exercise to fund the project to construction.
So that would looking at doing again, just for the avoidances there, when we're talking about the funding, that's not equity, that's looking at doing debt finance, bank finance, project finance, offtake finance, etc., etc.
All avenues are open at the moment. We are going to analyze all the possibilities to fund the project, but at this moment, we are looking for the right partner to develop the project and to have the right structure in place to support that project finance in the future.
Well, I know them by reputation, and they are a very experienced, sophisticated, and eminently respected group within the mining world. A couple of quick questions here, Ignacio. So a couple of people are just asking about the the guarantor, whether there'll be a potential partner. Somebody's asking with them. Just to, if I may, somebody missed there. So they are a mining company. They have a relationship with a number of the senior management. Ignacio, you just want to comment about whether they would be a potential partner?
We are not close to that option, though. We are going to be looking all across the globe into different industries, not only mining companies, but also cathode manufacturers, battery manufacturers, OEMs, off-takers. So we are going to be looking broadly to find the right partner for us. We have had a lot of interest in the past. We have engaged many companies in the past regarding this project. Everyone's been waiting for the CEOL, so we feel now is the right time to start for that process. It's going to take some time, but we want to make sure we make the right decision.
Okay, I'm just trying to coordinate some of these into one. Quick couple of questions here before we go through the activities, just because they come up, and then we can get back to the activities and the timelines, because we hadn't really mentioned on the ASX here. Ignacio, so what we've got is, well, actually, sorry, let's deal with this and then we'll go through the questions into. Right, so the major activities then from 2026 onwards. Do you want to just go through then where we're expecting to, after the PFS, after the application, the EIA and the Digital Community Alliance, explain some of these points here that are on the slide?
Yes, yeah. What comes next? Because since I joined, we've been talking about the CEOL and PFS. So what is next after we have a check before these two activities? What we will do once we have all of this under our belt is to start preparing the DFS, definitive feasibility study, and in parallel work on the environmental impact study, which is the environmental license to build and operate our project. So those two activities should go in parallel for the next couple of years, and we should be with our strategic partner already chosen doing these activities. And once they are done, we can go to FID, to the final investment decision, and then the construction of the project.
Excellent. I look forward to popping a bottle of champagne with you when we finally have the final investment decision, along with everybody who's worked so hard for this. Right, let's focus on some of these questions, because it's always the interesting part. And please, if anybody has any other questions here, please shoot them up. We'll try and keep this within the hour if we can. So that actually gives us 28 minutes, and hopefully we'll finish a little bit before there. So Ignacio, thank you for that. Well, one of the questions we have for John A is the environmental process. Can you talk a little bit more to what is required in the environmental process, what you actually have to do, where in the timeline between now and FID it sort of really sits?
Okay, so the environmental process is, I think, the longest timeline that we have to meet before we get to FID. We have to do environmental baselines. We have done some in the past, but we have to redo them because of all the time that has passed. That takes around 12 months, and then and in parallel, you prepare the environmental impact study and submit it, and then it takes like 12 to 18 months of processing. To get the final license, it goes with an indigenous consultation process. So we will be working on that. That is a license where you explain how you will operate, where you will get your raw materials, how your operation sits and how you protect the environment while you're operating, etc. So it's an important step that we need to take, and I hope we can start as soon as possible. It's since the baselines takes 12 months, the sooner the better for me. I think we'll wait until we are awarded the CEOL to move with the environmental consultants, but we have done some work in the past with them as well. So that's kind of the timeline done for the environmental impact study, which is very important for the government. This new government the current government has made some changes to the environmental system to make it simpler and shorter, and we know that the next government also wants to complement that with a set of new regulations that we believe will be beneficial, looking for companies to have a shorter time frame to approve projects.
Thank you. Okay, trying to collate some of these questions. Okay, we have a couple of questions around the legal one in time. Obviously, you're very limited on what you can say in a public forum about anything that's legal, and you can't comment anything in a public forum which isn't put out as a regulatory news announcement to the Xayah Stock Exchange. If I may, I think what you have said is it doesn't impact on the SEOL application. I think maybe you could just reiterate what you've already made public for those people who maybe didn't get it too, and correct me here if I'm wrong, is it is a subsidiary, non-operating company with
Yes.
no balance sheet. So it's not Cleantech Lithium, nor is it the entity that's applying for the SEOL license.
That's correct. I think it's important to highlight that we cannot discuss ongoing litigation, but I want to tell everyone to rest assured that, as you mentioned, this has no impact to our SEOL application, as the subsidiary is not part of the SEOL application, and the licenses are not part of the SEOL application either.
Yeah, and no, I have to be very careful about what we can and cannot say. So that will rumble on. But yeah, I think it's very clear is that it is not at the dispute is obviously with anything from the Topco company, the public entity company, nor is it at the company of which we've made the application to the government. And obviously, I would have expected, and you could comment that you will have raised this with the government and they will have been aware of it.
But again, this is it's nothing to the company applying to the SEOL. So
yeah, so it's not there, so it has no impact. So look, it's a small discussion commute, but I would reiterate sort of our view as well from what I've seen is that it's not material to what we're doing, and there's some reasons. Okay, right, hang on, there's some people there. Okay, so couple of things here that are coming up, so that would right. Quick question that I can answer. John A, when would we expect to see a broker's note? We've been drafting a broker's note. We've been waiting, obviously, for these announcements to come out. We will put out a price target. The problem that we have, John, in putting a price target is we don't have access to the PFS. We have information on the scoping study. We will make some assumptions about inflation within the mining industry, but any price target is going to be driven by our assumptions, which are purely our assumptions on where costs have moved within the industry. So we'll look at a number of other lithium companies in the peer groups, and we'll look at where their costs have changed in their projections, and then we'll apply the average of that onto Cleantech. But I want to stress, I'm not party to the PFS, and obviously the analyst is only working off publicly available information. So a price target may then move when we come with the PFS, and then you have the problem that people come back and say, why have you revised it up or down? Secondly, it's going to be highly sensitive to the lithium price. So what we're currently looking at doing is we will do a range of price forecasts based on different price scenarios, because they have to feed into a discounted cash flow model to give a net present value of where we think it is. Okay, but we would expect to get a note fairly shortly, and on the back of that we will commence doing a lot more marketing. Right, so that was on the broker's note question. Ignacio, ASX listing. So the general crypto there is saying, has it been forgotten? You're limited again on what you can say in a public forum without an RNS. Maybe I could express my view from the broking point of view.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So the company invested a lot of time and money into the ASX. We have a prospectus fairly ready to go. The feedback from investors in Australia was they very much wanted to see the SEOL awarded, and they wanted to see the PFS published. we still think there is a significant price differential between where stocks are trading on the ASX, particularly some of the companies' peer groups that are also doing DLE brine projects in Latin America, and the valuation being attributed to companies in London. So from my side, I have certainly said to the company, once you're through this in the SEOL, I would like to address the board collectively in that I would like to then revisit the process, which would be then more probably my personal view would be to do a compliance listing, which is a few hundred investors at minimum of $2,000 each Australian, about £1,000 to meet the requirement. The reason being for that is if you look at the number of analysts covering lithium companies in London, there's about half a dozen. If you look at the number of analysts covering the universe of lithium companies on the ASX, there's something in the region of about 85, including analysts in Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, some Chinese analysts, a number of UK analysts that are covering, and then a number of Canadian analysts for the companies that are dual listed. And the way it works in research is that somebody was covering Galan or Lake Resources, they would have to start covering onto Cleantech Lithium as well. So it needs to be a board decision. It hasn't been raised or discussed in several months. My recommendation is I think it would make sense. And I think it's something that the board has been very, very busy and working very hard on this application and updating on the PFS. So when I last spoke to the board as their broker about this back in end of October, and Ignacio and I were last together, we agreed to revisit it in the new year after we'd received the notification that we're going in. But from my point of view, I think it would still make a lot of sense. And I think that's something we can revisit in a month. Is that fair enough, Ignacio?
That's fair. I would say I would only add it's step by step. We want to get the SEOL first, the PFS out, and while we look for a strategic partner, we will evaluate our options, which are on the table.
Fair. I think that's a fair comment going out. Right. Okay. John and some other people have talked about sort of cash and financing. Gentlemen, we're not trying to be evasive. We cannot, as a public company, make any statements about financings or burn rates. I would say, obviously, we'd raised money. We spent a little bit on the licenses at the back end. That would carry us through well into this year. The company doesn't have a great deal of burn rate at the moment. It will be publishing updated financials in due course, but we would be in breach of stock exchange rules to give any specific numbers in a closed webinar that we haven't then published as a regulatory news statement to the London Stock Exchange. Sorry, regulatory news announcement. So we will do another webinar once we've published the next set of financials. And that's not trying to be evasive in any way. It's just a requirement of what we're doing. Right, let's go through some of the others. Jump in from here. Let's have a look. Right. What are the effects of the amendment of the Polygon, Ignacio, following the indigenous consultation, and what might be the effect on the resource estimate?
That's a great question by Paul. I was actually looking at the same question.
Yeah.
So what happened in the indigenous consultation process is the Polygon changed as the communities asked the government to protect some areas. Mainly, it is the lagoon surface. So it's good news for us. We never expected to extract brine from the lagoon itself, as it's a protected area. It's a touristic destination. We want to actually protect the lagoon and showcase it. And we will be extracting from the vicinity of the lagoon. It has no impact to our resource estimate. It continues to be the same 1.9 million tons LCE that we have publicly announced.
Thank you. So there's a couple of here. So one in from Simon B, Simon Bakewell, who I've spoken to many times, has been a long-term and very supportive shareholder to the company. Simon, I don't know where you joined in, but the current partner is in the mining space. It is one. Obviously, the company's just announced that they've appointed this strategic advisor, Cutfield Freeman, looking at all options. I think this strategic partner on the, I think there's 0.01% is what they have now.
Yeah. Less than 0.01.
Less than 0.01, and we have the right to buy that back. So it's a friendly, supportive deal. There was no reason why they could not be potentially a strategic partner, but at the same time, the company is going to run a competitive process to go out and find the best potential partner to develop the project, both in terms of not only balance sheet, expertise, but relationships that they can bring in. And that might be a mining company, it might be a trading company, it might be a manufacturing company, that might be European, it might be North American, it might be Asian. So Cutfield Freeman will run that process and request for interest and then help build that together. So let's go right there. And in terms of your other thing here, Simon, EXIM and US International Development Finance and corporations, all of those parties will be in the mix, or a combination of will be or have been in the mix of conversations and options to develop a project. Certainly, Steve had a number of meetings previously with those partners, and all of those things become viable or more pertinent, shall we say, once we've been awarded the sale. So there is a large group of parties that are interested in the company's project, ranging from government entities, companies in the manufacturing and automotive sectors, industrial partners, trading houses, major mining companies, smaller mining companies who want to access, all of which I know from my conversations have expressed an interest, and this is just a hello, we'd like to talk to you, and the company has come back and said, we'll come back to all of you once we actually have our license awarded. So Simon, if you want
yeah, and Simon's point, there are also other entities in other jurisdictions that offer the same support. We are evaluating all of them. There's the same in Europe, there's the same in Japan, Korea, and in China. And Chile, as a very open country, has free trade agreements with all of these jurisdictions. So it's attractive to all of these companies from all of them to potentially or look to invest in a company like Cleantech.
So Ignacio, what a question here from Robert P. So from getting the sale license, what is the actual sort of the timeline, roughly the RISE timeline to actually getting to production, first production? I mean, I appreciate one of the things you need to now decide whether you can do a 20,000 ton a year plant or a 40 or a step and a module and all that stuff. But roughly, what do you think is a realistic timeline?
So I think this will be covered in the PFS. So without giving a lot of details, you have to think about 2.5 years to get the permit, the environmental permit, from the moment that you start doing the environmental license baseline until you get the permit. And then you have to think about construction, which is also, I think, a little bit over a year. So the beginning, late 2030 is realistic.
Late 2030. Okay, so about 2.5 years for the baseline and then go from there. So 3 to 4 years from here to actually get away into proper production. Couple other questions, if we may. I'll allow to talk to the dilution one in a second. But Ignacio, there's a question here about the clarification for all new projects under the government to remove the sale process. My understanding is that once they're granted, that's a legally awarded and it can't be changed. And it follows into another question here about saying that the terms are fixed for 30 years. Could you comment towards that, please?
So it's the CEOL is a contract, a special operations contract that is set for a term, and it cannot be changed during that term unless both parties agree. So from that perspective, it gives a lot of certainty to the company that gets awarded a CEOL. And that's why the government, through this negotiation stage, wants to set the specific terms of the royalties and other conditions that have to be met in a very long contract. And the first question, I think I struggle to understand, but is it whether the new government will change the CEOL process?
Yes. Is there a risk that the government would come in and just tear up the whole process effectively and take away the sales?
No. Once Chile is very well respected for its rule of law, so once the CEOL is awarded, it will be respected. There's no doubt about it.
I have to say, both Chile and actually a number of African countries are right at the top of companies of abiding keeping. The country that's worst for changing the laws and the taxation and the royalties on resources deals is the British government with the North Sea. I think they've changed, the taxation something like 19 times in the last 30-something years. Whenever it goes up, they go and use it to raid. So we're the worst actually in the world, and everybody does better than us. Right. If there's a question here from John A and one about the dilution, which if I may, Ignacio, I might just jump into on your behalf about dilution and financial strategic partner. The company is seeking a strategic partner at the project level. I think in the scoping study, we were looking at several $100 million to develop the project back in the previous one. In terms of the multiple projects that they had, I'll have to go back and revise it. But the intention is you'll end up with a joint venture partner at the project level, and we'll assume that in the numbers, and that's always been assumed. So it's not that you're going to get a dilution at the top co in terms of the public company. We will bring in a joint venture partner, and the expectation is that most of the financing to put the company to put the assets into production will come in a combination of either partner financing, bringing their balance sheet, or project financing, or in a number of cases going to, as was mentioned here, things like the US Exim Bank, various other parties that may provide financing. A lot of the kit you could get effectively equipment financing, you can get offtake financing as well. So there's a whole combination of avenues that the company will explore in combination with Cutfield Freeman to put together a robust financing package of a combination of, first of all, as Ignacio said, finding the right strategic partner. And that partner is a combination of expertise, but also balance sheet, and then balance sheet and relationships that are beneficial to the company. And then having found that strategic partner, the company, that strategic partner, and Cutfield Freeman will then work to put together a combined financing package, predominantly a project finance, strategic partner financing with kind of a number of different forms, potentially an offtake financing, which is what you've seen in all of the headlines and a lot of the other companies, to meet the overall package of the company to then go forward to the final investment decision. Is that okay, Ignacio?
Yep, I think you covered correctly, Dan.
So that's just John. So yes, you shouldn't expect dilution from the strategic partner, and upon announcing. Chris P, the potential range, I think both I would advise Ignacio, I don't think in a public forum, the PFS will do an up-to-date forecast of what the project will cost. And again, most of that will come from project finance and from debt finance. But this close away, I don't think we're in a position where we could put that in this forum. And again, it's not to be elusive, but given that we are very close to publishing the PFS, we hope at the beginning of February, so only maybe 4 or 5 weeks, I think it would be inadvisable to respond to that at times. So I'm sorry, but we will have that numbers fairly well. And again, the financing quantum's on the PFS, but that's not equity finance, so there's not talking a conversation about a discount and things and that you've got. There's a question here about how we're going to finance over the period of time between now and then. Ignacio, if I may, I think, and I'll put it to you, but when I've spoken to Steve, quite often when you bring in a joint venture partner, you would look to recover some of the costs that you spent to date.
Right, it's either that or they fund. So we are still evaluating the best alternatives, and that's one of the purposes of hiring Cutfield Freeman, to make sure that we select the right strategy going forward. But but also they can do a carryover of cost from now until wherever. So there are several options that we need to evaluate.
And then actually a very pertinent question from David L. David asking Ignacio about, so where did we get, so we obviously still have the pilot plant in Chile. We spent $4 million on the pilot plant. We successfully produced Elliott. We shipped that up to Chicago from memory. And we produced our first battery grade 99.9% carbon lithium. Lithium carbonate.
Lithium
sorry,
carbonate.
it's about 10 o'clock here in Dubai, and I was in at 7 a.m. Excuse me. So the question is, are we still producing? And if not, why not? And would we accept to produce again going forward?
So we will be probably in the future, and you should expect some news, I would say, in first quarter. So stay close to us, stay close to our updates, because there might be something around regarding that. And Dan, if there are no more questions, I wanted to close reiterating, the timelines of the very first, very important first quarter that we're going to be having with Cleantech. First of all, the application to the CEOL, hopefully the negotiation starting in February, the PFS being issued in February, the strategic partnership process ongoing in February, going probably for the whole first half of the year to find the right partner, and then everything that we can do in the ground once we are awarded the CEOL to make sure that we are as closer to production as we can, the sooner that we can.
I think it's going to be an extremely interesting next 8 to 10 weeks. And I know you can see the question, but I wanted to thank Ben Y has said Happy New Year to you, and to thank you and all the management team for all the hard work that you've put in over the last few months and over the festive break, and say continue up the hard work from Ben. So Ben, thank you very much for taking the time to write that. I'm sure that is appreciated. From our side, everybody, we need news flow and updates in order to go marketing. So from my side, I have been waiting for the sale application to go in. We will now start to reactivate our efforts in terms of ongoing marketing investors. There's a number of new people that have come in just ahead of Christmas, a number of parties that we've been talking to, but we will be getting back out with Ignacio to London and into Europe, and getting back out into the US, particularly now, so some of the concerns about access to lithium and China's control of it. But everybody wanted to see the sale in. And quite frankly, we also needed to see the recovery in the lithium price, because it's pretty hard to go out and pitch the company when you've got an ongoing depressed lithium market. Even though everybody said we expect it to come back next year, everybody wants to see that. So with the lithium price back up at $18,000 a ton, more than doubling in the recent months, with the sale application in, and what we expect to be in the award of the fast track, which then we will be going out and doing a lot of marketing back to both existing investors, but also to a lot of new investors who said, come back when you have the sale. So from my side, Ignacio, I want to thank you again from my side for all of the efforts. I know you and the team have worked a lot over the Christmas period. I look forward to catching up with you face to face very soon. And I think from as shareholders, we can say that we'll be doing another webinar probably in about sort of 4 to 5 weeks time, as soon as we've got here back from the government.
Yeah, and I want to end thanking everyone, all of our shareholders, prospective investors, for their support. And I'm really excited about 2026. I think it will be, as we said, a pivotal year for the company, to get awarded the CEOL, finally release the PFS, and start moving the project forward to construction, which is what we're all waiting for.
And look at that, we're bang on 59 minutes. We'll keep Nick happy. Ignacio, thank you very much. We'll pass back to Paul.
That's great. Thanks, Daniel and Ignacio, for updating investors. If I could please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now redirect you for your feedback. On behalf of the company, I'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation and wish you all a good rest of your day. Thank you.